Imagine your online transaction history, right? Or your behavioral profile.
You all those little digital footprints.
Exactly. Imagine the highly specific ways you scroll or pause or, interact with the apps on your phone.
Right.
Imagine the information isn't just some byproduct of you living your digital life, just sitting idle on a tech company's server somewhere.
That's how we usually think about it.
Right. Instead, imagine that exact data is officially recorded on that company's financial books.
Like carrying a specific, heavily audited monetary value.
Yes, sitting right next to their physical real estate, their factory machinery, and their cash reserves.
It sounds wild, but it's not a hypothetical future.
No, it's really not. And that's our mission for today's deep dive. Today, we're looking at how global national accounting systems are actively rewriting the very definition of wealth.
It's a massive shift.
It really is. We are exploring this profound structural shift in the digital economy where your personal data transitions from a mere IT byproduct into a rigorously measurable economic asset.
And the catalyst for this shift is actually coming from the highest levels of global governance.
Right, the United Nations.
Exactly. Right now, the UN is preparing to roll out its updated system of national accounts for 2025.
The SNA 2025.
Yeah, and this is essentially the official global rulebook for how countries calculate their gross domestic product.
Okay.
And major nations specifically, we're looking at India's Statistics Ministry, MoSPI, they are actively laying the groundwork to implement this framework.
Wow. So they are taking this seriously.
Very. The core of this update officially recognizes data as an economic asset. We're talking about fundamentally rewriting the mathematics of how a country calculates its actual tangible wealth.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately because right now, that is definitely not how most companies are treating your data.
No, not at all.
If you look at the current mindset in the corporate world, it's almost entirely defensive.
Yeah, it's a compliance mindset.
Right. Companies look at modern privacy regulations like India's recent Digital Personal Data Protection Act, and they just see this giant, terrifying list of things they can get penalized for.
They view privacy as a massive cost center.
Exactly. They're spending millions of dollars building firewalls, managing those annoying user consent pop-ups, and, hiring legal teams just to avoid regulatory fines.
Right, it's all about risk mitigation.
It feels like a company buying a ridiculously expensive state-of-the-art security vault, right? Hiring armed guards, setting up laser tripwires purely to avoid getting a penalty from a safety inspector.
While totally ignoring what's inside.
Yes.
Yeah.
Without ever realizing that the vault is actually filled with solid gold. So I have to ask, if there is so much intrinsic value in this data, why are they so completely blind to it?
Well, the vault is a decent starting point for an analogy, but here's where it kind of breaks down.
Oh.
Yeah, because gold just sits there in the dark, statically holding its value.
Okay, true.
But data actually depreciates if you don't use it, and it multiplies in value when you combine it with other data.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Right. And the reason companies have been blind to this is that traditional accounting simply wasn't built to measure something so fluid.
It's too dynamic.
Exactly. Historically, accountants knew exactly how to value a delivery truck or, a physical warehouse.
Sure, tangible things.
But they didn't know how to value a million email addresses. But new privacy frameworks and governance standards like the DGPSI in India are fundamentally changing this.
How so?
They argue that you cannot view personal data merely as a compliance burden anymore. It is a regulated asset that carries heavy legal obligations, yes, but it's simultaneously a business asset that generates immense economic value.
So it's two sides of the same coin.
Precisely. If an organization only understands the compliance side, privacy is just a drain on their resources. But if they understand both dimensions, they transform privacy from a necessary evil into, the core engine of their business.
So they basically need a reliable way to appraise that engine.
Right.
Essentially, they're having to invent an entirely new rule book just for valuing data. Like a Kelly Blue Book for your personal information.
That's a great way to put it. They even have a specific standard for it now, the Data Valuation Standard of India.
But how does that actually work in practice? I mean, if a company has a database of user habits, how do they attach a literal dollar sign to it?
It requires looking at the data through distinct valuation methodologies. So let's say a retail company wants to value their customer database.
Okay.
They might use a cost approach, which calculates exactly how much money it would cost to rebuild that exact data set from scratch if it were deleted today.
Oh, so factoring in marketing acquisition costs.
Server time, algorithmic processing, all of that.
Wow, okay.
What else?
Well, alternatively, they might use an income approach. This isolates how much future revenue that specific data set is projected to generate through, say, targeted advertising or personalized product recommendations.
Right. And when you apply these mathematical methodologies, you quickly realize that a rich customer database or a massive data set used to train artificial intelligence often contributes way more to a company's true enterprise value than their physical office buildings.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because to track all of this, we have to talk about the data balance sheet.
Yes, this is Naavi's concept.
Right. This is a proposed double-entry governance framework to actually manage these valuations. On one side, you have the personal data under management listed as an actual data asset with that quantified value we just talked about.
Yep, the positive side of the ledger.
But on the flip side, you have the liabilities. You have to record the potential risks, things like compensation claims if there's a data breach, regulatory penalties, reputational damage, the hard cost of remediation.
Exactly. These are recorded as contingent data liabilities.
But I have to push back on the mechanics of this for a second.
Go for it.
Because traditional accounting tracks highly tangible things. If you buy a factory, you record the cost of the factory. Are you telling me that if a tech company suddenly discovers a software bug in their security architecture, their theoretical liability instantly goes up, and that directly hits their overall organizational valuation?
Yes, that is exactly how it functions.
Wait, really? Just from a bug?
Just from a bug. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, to understand why that makes sense, we have to look at the historical evolution of intellectual property.
Okay.
Decades ago, intellectual property, things like software code, patents, or a brand's logo that was just an abstract legal right.
Right, you couldn't touch it.
Exactly. It was incredibly difficult for an auditor to place a hard monetary value on a string of code. But today, IP is a universally recognized economic asset. It's capitalized, it's amortized, and it sits proudly on financial balance sheets.
I see where you're going with this.
The data balance sheet is simply the next necessary evolution. It acts as the bridge between data economics and data protection jurisprudence. If a company finds a critical security vulnerability, the economic risk to the enterprise has materially changed, even if a breach hasn't actually happened yet.
Okay, so it's exactly like discovering asbestos in a massive real estate portfolio.
That's a fantastic comparison.
Right. The physical building, or in this case, the data asset, is still sitting there, seemingly functioning fine. But the liability of a potential lawsuit or a massive environmental cleanup suddenly tanks the asset's overall market value.
Precisely. The data asset and the data liability are locked in this sort of seesaw relationship based on data quality and security.
So if you fix the problem,
If you clean your data, remove inaccuracies, and secure it with cutting-edge encryption, the asset value literally goes up on the balance sheet because it's more reliable for AI training and less risky to hold.
and if you don't,
If you have toxic, unverified data sitting in a vulnerable server, your liability spikes.
that makes total sense when you frame it as a dynamic risk profile. And what's wild is that this isn't just some academic exercise for corporate accountants.
Not at all.
We mentioned the United Nations framework earlier, but governments are actively moving to adopt this at a macro level. India's statistics ministry isn't just studying this UN SNA 2025 framework.
No, they are taking tangible steps.
The government is simultaneously pushing to integrate AI, machine learning, and big data directly into official statistical systems,
Right, they're establishing things like a national statistical business register.
designed to create interoperable data exchanges across different states. Even the Comptroller and Auditor General is saying public sector undertakings need to start representing data value. But this brings up an immediate question for me, and probably for you listening, about how we measure reality.
How do you mean?
Well, if a nation officially recognizes the mere creation of data as an economic activity, doesn't that fundamentally rewrite how we measure economic productivity? Like, does a tech company simply generating a massive new database suddenly count toward the national GDP the exact same way manufacturing a ton of steel does?
It absolutely does, and that represents a conceptual earthquake in modern economics.
An earthquake, wow.
Truly. It's a fundamental shift from viewing data as just passive information to treating it as a literal factor of production.
Okay, wait, factor of production.
Yeah. For centuries, economists have measured national wealth based on classic factors: land, labor, and capital.
Right, the traditional pillars.
Exactly. By recognizing data creation as an economic activity, the new UN accounting standards are effectively saying that data is the new fourth factor of production.
I want to make sure we ground this because factor production sounds like very textbook terminology.
Fair enough. Let's ground it.
So if we look at a traditional taxi company, their capital is the fleet of cars and their labor is the drivers. That's how they produce value.
Right.
But if we look at a modern ride-sharing app, they use cars and drivers, sure, but their real engine is data.
The routing algorithms?
Yes, the real-time surge pricing maps, the predictive models of user habits. In that scenario, the data is the primary factor actually generating the exponential wealth.
That is a perfect illustration. The ride-sharing app literally cannot function, let alone generate profit, without that continuous data stream. It's as essential as the gasoline in the cars.
That's crazy to think about.
So from a national accounting perspective, ignoring the value of that data means you are dramatically undercounting the actual size and productivity of the digital economy.
You're missing the biggest piece of the pie.
Exactly. Integrating this into a national statistical business register means governments will finally have a mechanism to track data-driven value creation across all industries.
Which changes everything.
It will require entirely new methodologies for measuring GDP, but will finally reflect the reality of how modern businesses actually operate.
Okay, but as we establish just how incredibly valuable this data is, I mean, to the point that it's literally being factored into a country's macroeconomic output, we hit a massive legal roadblock.
The ownership question.
Yes, if data is this valuable asset sitting on a balance sheet, who actually owns it? Because the economic valuation of data seems to be on a direct collision course with the legal frameworks designed to protect privacy.
It's a huge tension point.
Right, because under laws like India's DPDPA, the system deliberately relies on a fiduciary model, not a property model.
That's a crucial distinction.
Under this legal framework, the data principal, which is you, the user whose behavior is being tracked, you retain the fundamental legal rights over your personal data.
Right.
The company holding your data is just the data fiduciary. They only have limited, highly conditional authority to process your data for specific, agreed-upon purposes.
Yeah.
The entire relationship is based on trust, accountability, and stewardship. It is not based on ownership.
No, not at all.
So if I'm a CEO and I'm looking at this brand new data balance sheet and seeing millions of dollars in asset value, my natural capitalist instinct is to say, I own this. This is my property.
Of course.
But legally, I don't. It's like I'm claiming my neighbor's sports car on my mortgage application just to boost my net worth. I am struggling to see how auditors, let alone lawmakers, let corporations get away with placing a massive economic value on their books for an asset they fundamentally do not legally own.
What's fascinating here is that the tension you're describing between economic value and fiduciary responsibility, that is going to be the defining jurisprudential battle of the next decade.
I can imagine.
How do you reconcile a balance sheet with user rights?
Yeah.
But your neighbor's car analogy, while funny, kind of misses the specific legal nuance of a fiduciary.
Oh, how so?
A better comparison is a wealth manager or a major investment bank.
Okay, I'm listening.
When you deposit your retirement fund with a bank, the bank does not own your money. You are the ultimate owner. However, the bank is holding those assets in trust. They manage the portfolio, they derive legitimate business value from processing those funds, and they leverage their total assets under management to demonstrate their scale and market power to their own shareholders.
Ah, okay. So the tech company is basically acting as a highly regulated custodian.
Exactly. Recognizing the economic value of the data does not suddenly grant ownership of that data to the corporation or the government. The DPDPA framework strictly forbids that property mindset.
So they have to exist together.
Right. The economic value of the data must coexist with the fundamental legal rights of the individual data principal. A data fiduciary holds your data. They derive specific, consented business value from analyzing it, which goes on their balance sheet. But the ultimate rights, including the right to demand deletion, remain firmly with you.
So what does this all mean for the people checking the math? Managing that incredibly complex tightrope balancing immense economic value on one side with strict revocable fiduciary trust on the other sounds like an absolute nightmare for whoever has to verify all of this.
It's a monumental task.
Because of this shift, the people responsible for auditing these companies are going to need a massive structural upgrade. We are basically looking at the birth of an entirely new profession, the independent data auditor.
Yes. The role is completely transforming.
Because in the past, an auditor could just tick a few boxes to say, Yes, the company has a firewall installed. Yes, they have a privacy policy that users blindly agree to. But if data is now a financial asset, they can't just be box checkers anymore.
No, the days of the checklist audit are completely ending. If an organization claims to have $50 million of data assets on their balance sheet, the auditor has to verify that those assets are real, legally compliant, and actually worth that
So
amount.
how do they even do that?
Well, they have to audit the data lineage, meaning they have to technically trace exactly where the data came from, how it was transformed, and whether the user actually consented to this specific use case.
That sounds incredibly complex.
It is. And they have to audit the mathematical methodologies the company is using to calculate the valuation. And think about AI. If the company is feeding this data into an AI model, the auditor has to evaluate the AI training data governance to ensure no toxic or unconsented data is poisoning the system and spiking their liabilities.
It sounds like the auditor of tomorrow isn't just a number cruncher anymore.
Definitely not.
They have to be part lawyer to navigate the fiduciary compliance, part data scientist to understand API endpoints and data lineage, and part economist to verify the valuation models. An absolute multidisciplinary superhero.
That's exactly what the industry is going to need.
But let me bring this back to the listener for a second. If I am just a normal person using a smartphone, how does this actually impact my everyday interactions with these companies? Does the existence of a super auditor change the way a random food delivery app treats my data?
This raises an important question, and the short answer is yes. It changes everything about corporate accountability. And we can look at a very recent historical parallel to understand why.
Okay, what's the parallel?
20 years ago, environmental accounting was a peripheral, almost public relations-driven idea. Companies might put out a glossy brochure about their recycling efforts, but it wasn't core to their financial health.
Right, it was just greenwashing.
Exactly. But today, that has evolved into mandatory ESG, environmental, social, and governance reporting. Institutional investors demand to know a company's carbon footprint because climate risk is now universally recognized as strict financial risk.
Oh, I see. And data is next.
Data valuation is on the exact same trajectory. Right now, calculating a data balance sheet is a recommended governance practice for forward-thinking companies. But very soon, as national statistical systems like the UN SNA adapt, it will likely become a mandatory reporting requirement.
So they won't have a choice.
No. Organizations will be legally forced by financial regulators to prove accountable stewardship of your data.
That's huge.
When that happens, companies will stop treating your personal data carelessly because any misuse, any breach, or any collection of poor quality data will immediately trigger a contingent liability that directly hurts their audited bottom line.
So it hits them where it hurts.
Exactly. The apps on your phone will be forced to treat your digital footprint with the exact same rigorous security and care that a bank treats your cash deposits.
That is a staggering shift in perspective. We are truly moving from a world where personal data is just a messy IT headache, a risk to be mitigated by the legal department, to a world where it is a rigorously quantified asset on a formal data balance sheet.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
It really is. It's reshaping how the UN measures global wealth. It's forcing national governments to rethink the fundamental factors of production. And it is simultaneously forcing massive corporations to balance their endless drive for profit with the fundamental legal rights of the individual user.
As Naavi noted in the source material, if the 20th century was governed by the financial balance sheet, the 21st century will absolutely be governed by the data balance sheet.
I couldn't agree more. But before we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Something to think about next time you click Accept on a cookie banner.
Exactly. We spent a lot of time talking about that fiduciary model where the company holds the economic value of the data on their books, but you hold the ultimate legal rights.
The ultimate power, really.
Right. So if personal data officially becomes the foundational asset that props up a tech giant's valuation, what happens if thousands or even millions of users suddenly decide to exercise their rights and revoke their consent at the exact same time?
That would be catastrophic for them.
Could we eventually see the digital equivalent of a bank run, where a major tech corporation's market valuation plummets overnight simply because the users decided to take their data back? Think about the power that puts back in your hands.
It's a whole new world.
It really is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and keep questioning the hidden structures of our digital world.